Hello and welcome. I'm Aidan, your narrator for tonight. Let's take this time together to step away from the rush of the day and ease into a world of dreams and wonder. Tonight, I'll tell you a story. A day at the parade. A gentle tale about unexpected magic, quiet kindness, and the soft, comforting surprises that can appear in the most ordinary moments. But before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from? And what time is it as you settle in to hear this story? We'd also love to know what kinds of stories you'd enjoy next. Your thoughts and suggestions inspire us, so please share them in the comments below. If you've been enjoying our bedtime stories, subscribing is a simple and free way to support us. Your support means the world to us, and together we can make this channel an even more peaceful place for storytelling. Now, take a moment to find a comfortable position, letting your body settle into softness. Allow your shoulders to drop, your breath to slow, and your thoughts to drift gently like leaves on a calm stream. Feel the quiet settle around you, warm and comforting, as if the night itself is wrapping you in a gentle embrace. Let the stillness deepen with each breath. And when you're ready, we'll step together into our story and let the magic of the parade unfold. The morning sun drifted gently into Johnson's room, slipping through the pale curtains like golden ribbons. The light settled softly across his bed, warming the blankets and brushing against his cheeks. Johnson stirred, blinked once, and let out a slow, contented breath. Today was the day he had been waiting for, the annual town parade, a tradition he had loved since childhood. He didn't leap out of bed the way he once did as a boy. Instead, he moved with an easy, peaceful rhythm, savoring the quiet beginning of the day. He sat up slowly, stretching his arms above his head until his shoulders relaxed completely. The room held that comforting stillness only early mornings could offer. No noise, no hurry, just the soft hum of a world not fully awake. Outside, the birds were already greeting the sunrise. Their gentle melody floated through the open window, weaving into the warm stillness of the room. Johnson smiled as he listened, letting the sound settle warmly in his chest. It felt like the world itself was reminding him to breathe a little deeper, to enjoy this moment before the day truly began. He stood and walked to the window, brushing aside the curtain with a calm sweep of his hand. The light wrapped around him, warming the fabric of his cream-colored shirt and glinting across his dark brown hair. The town below was peaceful. Quiet rooftops, soft morning colors, and the faint promise of excitement beginning to stir in the distance. Johnson leaned on the windowsill for a moment, simply taking it all in. He loved this part of the day, the calm before the celebration, the gentle anticipation humming beneath the quiet air. He got dressed in comfortable clothes, choosing a cozy light blue sweater that reminded him of clear skies. As he slipped it on, he felt a familiar flutter of excitement, not loud or overwhelming, but soft and steady, the kind that warmed him from the inside. Before leaving, he paused by the door and breathed in deeply. Warm sunshine, fresh morning air, the quiet joy of knowing something beautiful awaited him. With an easy smile and a peaceful heart, Johnson stepped outside, ready to begin his day at the parade. Johnson stepped out into the gentle morning air, closing his door behind him with a soft click. The town was beginning to wake, but everything still felt slow and pleasantly unhurried. The sky held a pale morning blue, and a light breeze drifted past, carrying with it the faint scent of fresh bread and blooming flowers from nearby homes. He walked along the familiar street, taking his time. The houses were washed in soft sunlight, their windows glowing warmly. Neighbors were beginning to emerge, some sweeping their porches, others hanging little flags or ribbons in preparation for the parade. There was a shared quiet excitement in the air, but nothing loud or rushed, just a gentle, collective joy. Children skipped ahead of their parents, clutching ribbons or small wooden toys shaped like parade floats. A few waved to Johnson as they passed, and he returned the gesture with a calm smile. He liked mornings like this, when everyone seemed just a little softer, a little more connected. As he rounded a corner near a row of small flower shops, he spotted someone kneeling on the ground, picking up scattered items from a fallen basket. Mr. Rowan. The elderly man had lived in the neighborhood for as long as Johnson could remember. He had soft white hair neatly brushed to the side, gentle wrinkles that deepened when he smiled, and a way of speaking that always felt comforting, like a warm cup of tea on a cold morning. Without hesitation, Johnson stepped over. "Good morning, Mr. Rowan. Let me help you with that," he said, bending down. "Oh, Johnson, thank you," the old man replied with a chuckle. "My hands aren't quite as steady as they used to be." Johnson gathered the fallen fruits and folded cloths, placing them carefully back into the woven basket. The two shared a small laugh when one adventurous apple attempted another escape, rolling a short distance before Johnson caught it. "There we are," Johnson said softly. "All safe again." Mr. Rowan rested a hand on the basket and gave Johnson a warm, grateful smile. "You're always so kind. Off to enjoy the parade, I imagine." "I wouldn't miss it," Johnson replied. "It's my favorite day of the year." "Mine too," Mr. Rowan said, eyes twinkling. "Go on then. Enjoy every moment." Johnson wished him a peaceful day before continuing down the path. As he walked farther toward the town square, the streets became livelier. Families carried blankets to spread out on the grass. Friends greeted each other with soft laughter. Vendors rolled their carts into place, preparing to sell warm pastries, sweet drinks, and handmade trinkets. Yet even with all the growing activity, the atmosphere remained gentle, like everyone had silently agreed to begin the day in a calm and hopeful tone. Johnson let his steps slow again, appreciating the harmony of it all. The parade hadn't started yet, but already the day felt special. By the time Johnson reached the town square, the morning sunlight had settled into a soft, warm glow that made the entire area feel peaceful and inviting. Families were setting down blankets on the grass. Children were choosing the perfect spots beneath rows of fluttering flags, and vendors were arranging baskets of pastries that filled the air with sweet, comforting scents. Johnson found a quiet place beneath a large, leafy tree whose branches stretched like gentle arms above him. The shade it provided was cool and soothing, just right for waiting. He spread out a small blanket he had carried with him and settled onto it, letting his shoulders relax fully as he leaned back against the sturdy trunk. The breeze brushed through his dark brown hair, ruffling it in a soft, playful way. Johnson didn't mind. The coolness felt good. From where he sat, he could see the entire stretch of the parade path and the distant shimmer of floats being lined up at the far end of the street. The band was nearby, warming up with slow, mellow notes that drifted lazily through the air. Trumpets hummed, drums thumped gently, and flutes released soft, wandering melodies that carried a calming rhythm. It made the entire square feel like a lullaby, gently preparing to open its eyes. Children wandered past in small groups, some holding colorful ribbons, others clutching parade-themed toys. Many of them laughed lightly as they tried to mimic the band's sounds, bumping into each other with harmless silliness. Their joy brought a faint smile to Johnson's face. Just then, one of the pastry vendors, a cheerful woman with a rosy face and a bright apron, approached. "Would you like one, dear?" she asked kindly, lifting a tray filled with warm, golden pastries. Johnson accepted a small pastry, the warmth of it sinking into his palms. "Thank you," he said in a soft voice. "Enjoy the parade," she replied, before moving along the path. Johnson took a slow bite, closing his eyes for a moment as the buttery sweetness melted gently across his tongue. It was simple, comforting, and paired perfectly with the soft music weaving through the square. As he opened his eyes again, he noticed how the sunlight filtered through the leaves above him, creating little shifting patches of gold on the ground, like tiny lanterns dancing at his feet. Everything felt calm. Everything felt right. The anticipation in the air remained, but it wasn't anxious or electric. It was gentle, like the soft inhale before a beloved story begins. Johnson leaned back against the tree, pastry in hand, and let the peacefulness of the moment wash over him. Soon, the first float would appear, and though he didn't yet know it, something magical was already on its way. A gentle hush spread across the town square, rolling through the crowd like a soft breeze. Johnson felt it immediately, the subtle shift in the air that meant the parade was finally about to begin. Children straightened up on their blankets, parents leaned forward, and the band quieted to a calm stillness as the first notes prepared to rise. Then, with a delicate flutter of flags at the far end of the street, the parade came to life. A slow, steady drumbeat echoed down the path, soft but full, like a heartbeat guiding the moment. The band began to play a gentle melody, cheerful yet soothing, and the first float glided into view. It was a butterfly-themed float, shimmering in pastel hues of lilac, pale gold, and seafoam green. Enormous wings arched gracefully from its sides, translucent and glowing, as if woven from morning light itself. The float moved with a serene, gliding motion, as though it were drifting on air. Johnson felt a peaceful warmth bloom in his chest. He watched the float pass with quiet admiration, his posture relaxed, a calm smile growing across his face. Behind it came a float shaped like a cozy cottage, complete with a miniature thatched roof, soft lanterns hanging from its eaves, and tiny puffs of golden smoke drifting from the chimney. A pair of performers dressed as gentle forest creatures waved softly at the crowd with slow, graceful motions. Their costumes glowed faintly under the sunlight, giving them an almost dreamlike quality. The children around Johnson giggled happily, but still kept their voices light, as if they understood the magic of the moment and didn't want to disturb it. Families clapped softly, their faces bright with warmth. Another float rolled by, a star-shaped platform covered in twinkling lights that flickered like early evening fireflies. A group of dancers stood upon it, moving in slow, flowing patterns that looked less like a routine and more like drifting constellations coming to life. Their movements were gentle enough to soothe, but mesmerizing enough to hold everyone's full attention. Johnson's eyes followed the dancers with a quiet sense of wonder. His breathing slowed, matching the rhythm of the music as each float continued its graceful progression. Every float seemed to tell its own story, stories of joy, of imagination, of childhood dreams folded into soft, glowing shapes. And Johnson absorbed each one with a calm heart, feeling as though he were being wrapped in the kindest, most peaceful form of magic. As the parade continued, the sunlight shifted slightly, catching the soft glitter on costumes, the gentle glow of lanterns, and the swirling patterns on the floats. The entire square felt enchanted, like a waking dream woven carefully for everyone who had gathered. Johnson settled back under the shade of his tree, breathing in the warm, sweet air. The parade had only just begun, and yet the day already felt perfect. He had no idea that something far more extraordinary was quietly making its way toward him, something unlike anything the town had ever seen before. The parade continued in its gentle, enchanting rhythm. Float after float drifted past with soft music, warm colors, and dreamlike designs. Johnson watched them all with peaceful fascination, letting each new creation warm his heart. But then, something changed. A subtle shift moved through the crowd. Not excitement, not fear, but a soft uncertainty. Conversations quieted. The band's music trailed off into a slow, lingering note. Johnson leaned forward slightly, sensing something unusual approaching from the far end of the street. At first, he saw nothing more than a pale shimmer, like a mirage wavering in the morning air. But as it drew closer, the shape became clearer. A float unlike any he'd ever seen in all the years he had attended the parade. It was completely wrapped in smooth, flowing silver cloth, draped from top to bottom in a way that hid every detail beneath it. The fabric shimmered faintly. Even in the gentle light, it glowed as though illuminated by something from within. Soft reflections of blue, lavender, and warm gold rippled across its surface, creating patterns that seemed alive. There were no performers on it, no decorations visible, no cheerful music or waving characters, just a low, steady hum, a sound so soft that Johnson almost wondered if he felt it rather than heard it. The float moved with slow, deliberate grace, gliding rather than rolling, its cloth rippling gently despite the stillness of the air. Children stopped mid-laugh. Adults leaned in, squinting curiously. Even the parade announcer seemed momentarily speechless. Johnson felt no fear, only a deep curiosity, wrapped in a strange calmness. The float didn't feel threatening at all. If anything, its presence felt peaceful, as if whatever it carried was meant to be gentle, patient, and kind. As it drew nearer, the glow beneath the silver cloth strengthened ever so slightly. Soft pulses of warm light radiated outward, brushing lightly across the street and painting the cobblestones in subtle hues of violet and gold. Johnson realized that the hum he felt earlier was now resonating faintly in his chest, steady, warm, rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the air. People whispered around him, "What float is that? It's not on the program. Is this a new surprise?" But no one stepped away. No one panicked. Instead, the entire crowd seemed quietly entranced, as though something gentle and magical had drifted into their morning. The float continued forward until it reached the shaded area where Johnson sat under the tree. Then, in the softest, most graceful motion, as if responding to an unseen cue, it began to slow. Johnson's breath caught slightly. The glow inside the float deepened. Something inside seemed to shift. The silver cloth trembled, like it was preparing to lift. A flutter of warm gold light escaped from its edge, brushing across Johnson's face like a soft whisper. Whatever this float was, it hadn't appeared by accident. And somehow, Johnson felt it was meant for him. The mysterious silver float drifted forward with slow, deliberate grace until it reached the very spot where Johnson sat beneath the broad shade of the tree. The gentle hum he'd felt earlier grew slightly stronger, not loud, but deeper, resonant, as if the sound was moving in time with his own heartbeat. Then, as if guided by invisible hands, the float came to a complete stop. Not in the middle of the street, not before the crowd, but directly, precisely, in front of Johnson. A soft ripple spread across the silver cloth, like wind moving through the surface of a calm lake. Johnson rose to his feet slowly, his expression calm, but filled with wonder. His dark brown hair caught the glow of the floating lights beneath the cloth, shimmering faintly with gold and lavender tones. Around him, the crowd grew quieter still. People leaned slightly forward, eyes wide in curiosity, but not fear. The stillness that settled over the square felt warm, welcoming, as though everyone instinctively knew this moment held no danger, only significance. The float trembled again. This time the movement was deliberate, purposeful. With a soft, breath-like sound, the silver cloth began to lift. Not all at once, but gradually, rising from the center as though drawn upward by gentle magic. A wash of soft light escaped from underneath. Pastel blues, warm golds, and velvety purples blending together in slow, swirling motions. The light spilled across Johnson's face, painting his features in calm colors. His warm brown eyes reflected the glow, making them seem brighter, deeper. Gasps fluttered through the crowd, but even these were hushed, like whispers carried on a soft breeze. Children clung to their parents, not out of fear, but out of awe. Older folks tilted their chins, trying to peer into the brilliance blooming before them. Johnson took a single step closer. The light brightened, pulsing gently in response. He could have sworn he heard something, an almost imperceptible murmur, like a voice speaking through warm air rather than sound. It wasn't words, not exactly, but the feeling of being called, invited, recognized. The interior of the float unfolded like a slowly blooming flower. Within the glowing mist, Johnson could make out drifting shapes, lanterns floating gently in the air, soft feathers swirling upward in lazy spirals, and patterns of light that danced like tiny constellations coming alive. The air felt warmer near the float, wrapping around him in a comforting embrace that made his breath slow and deepen. No one else stepped forward. No one else moved. It felt, unmistakably, as if the float had come for Johnson, and only for him. For a brief moment, Johnson placed his hand over his heart, feeling its calm, steady rhythm. There was no fear, just a profound sense of peace, of being gently guided towards something he didn't yet understand, but instinctively trusted. He took another step toward the glowing interior, and the float, almost in response, opened itself completely, inviting him into the heart of its soft, swirling light. Johnson paused at the very edge of the float, his breath soft and steady. The warm light wrapped around him like a gentle embrace, glowing in soft blues and golds that shimmered across his skin. For a moment, he simply stood there, taking in the dreamlike scene before him, floating lanterns swaying as though stirred by a tender breeze, small feathers drifting upward as if they weighed no more than a sigh, and strands of light curling through the air like ribbons of pure magic. He placed one foot onto the float. The surface felt solid, yet impossibly soft, almost like stepping onto a cloud. The moment his weight settled, the glow around him brightened, not blindingly, but with a warm, welcoming pulse. It felt alive, almost aware, responding to him with gentle warmth that seeped deep into his chest. The crowd behind him remained completely silent, as if the world itself had paused. Yet Johnson felt no pressure from their eyes, only a strange sense of privacy within the glow, as though the float had formed a cocoon around him, separating him from everything else. He took another step, then another. With each movement, the lanterns drifted to the sides, creating an illuminated path ahead of him. The feathers spiraled gracefully in slow motion, glowing faintly as they floated aside. Soft light gathered beneath his feet, forming what looked like delicate stepping stones made of warm brilliance. Inside the float, the air was tranquil and warm. The gentleness of it soothed him with every breath, easing every last bit of tension from his shoulders. Johnson's expression softened, his warm brown eyes reflecting the constellation-like lights swirling above him. He didn't know where the path led, but something deep within assured him that he was safe, cherished even. As he walked deeper into the float, a soft hum, almost musical, filled the space. It resonated with calm energy, harmonizing with his heartbeat. It felt like the float wasn't just guiding him, but communicating with him in a language of light and warmth. A faint mist drifted across the path, swirling around his legs like threads of silk. His sweater caught the glow of the floating lanterns, making the soft blue fabric shimmer. His steps were light, unhurried, almost as though he were wandering through a dream rather than reality. At one point, a lantern floated gently toward him. It hovered beside his shoulder, pulsing softly before drifting ahead to join the others, almost as if it were encouraging him forward. Johnson followed with a small, peaceful smile, feeling the quiet reassurance in every movement of light around him. Gradually, the swirling mist began to part, revealing something at the end of the glowing pathway. The air grew even softer, and the hum deepened in tone, hinting that he was approaching a place of significance. Johnson slowed his steps, his heart steady, his breath calm. Whatever awaited him at the end of this pathway, he felt ready to meet it. The light led him onward, gentle, patient, and full of quiet promise. The glowing pathway gradually widened as Johnson reached the heart of the float. The swirling mist softened into a delicate haze, parting like curtains being gently drawn aside. The lanterns above him brightened, drifting into a loose circle that hovered high overhead, casting warm gold and soft blue light across the space. At the end of the path stood a tall mirror. Not an ordinary mirror. Its frame shimmered like molten silver, constantly shifting with faint ripples of light. The glass itself glowed softly, as if illuminated from within. It gave off a gentle warmth, drawing Johnson forward with quiet reassurance. He approached slowly, his footsteps light against the glowing surface beneath him. The hum in the air deepened, not in volume, but in emotional resonance. It felt steady, welcoming, like a heartbeat filled with meaning. As Johnson came to stand before the mirror, it flickered once, then twice, and suddenly, it didn't show his reflection at all. Instead, the surface came alive like a moving painting. He saw himself, but in moments from earlier that day. There he was, helping Mr. Rowan gather his fallen belongings, smiling with gentle patience as the elderly man steadied himself. The scene shifted softly, and he saw himself greeting families along the walk, giving a warm nod to a shy child who waved at him. Another shift. Johnson saw himself seated beneath the tree, offering space on his blanket to two children who needed a clear view. The mirror didn't exaggerate anything. No grand gestures, no dramatic acts, only small, meaningful kindnesses that were part of who he naturally was. Light flowed across the mirror like a sigh of warmth. The scenes blended together, forming a constellation of gentle actions woven throughout the day. None of it felt boastful or proud. The mirror wasn't praising him. It was simply showing him what he didn't always see in himself. Softly, so softly he almost thought he imagined it, a voice drifted through the warm air. Not a whisper from a person, but something deeper, carried by the very glow surrounding him. You brighten the world in quiet ways. The words weren't spoken aloud. They were felt, like a warm hand resting over his heart. Johnson's chest tightened, not painfully, but with an emotional fullness he hadn't expected. He had never thought of himself as remarkable or important. He moved through life quietly, doing what felt right, simply because it was who he was. But now, standing before this magical mirror, he realized something. The parade hadn't chosen a performer. It hadn't chosen a leader. It hadn't chosen someone loud or dazzling. It had chosen someone whose kindness glowed softly, just like the lanterns floating above him. The mirror's light intensified, bathing him in a warm golden aura. New shapes began to form within the reflection, swirling lights gathering into something small, delicate, and beautiful. The float, the mirror, the light, all of it had one clear purpose: to reveal the truth he never claimed but quietly lived. His gentle heart had touched others more deeply than he knew. The mirror pulsed once more, preparing to offer him something he didn't yet understand, but something it had chosen specifically for him. The swirling lights within the mirror gathered into a single point, drawing together like threads of gold and soft blue being woven by invisible hands. Johnson watched, mesmerized, as the glow slowly condensed into a small, radiant shape, delicate, warm, and pulsing gently like a living ember of light. The mirror brightened once more, filling the air with a soft, resonant hum that vibrated through Johnson's chest, gentle and soothing. Then, with the elegance of a falling feather, the glowing shape drifted forward, passing through the mirror's surface without resistance. The glass rippled softly as it emerged, as though releasing something sacred into the quiet air. The object floated toward Johnson, slow and graceful, suspended in the warm glow. He raised his hands instinctively, not out of fear, but out of a quiet reverence for what he somehow sensed this moment meant. When the glowing form reached his palms, it settled lightly, warming his skin with a comforting heat. The light dimmed just enough to reveal its true shape, a lantern charm, small enough to fit in his hand, shaped like a tiny hanging lantern with smooth, rounded edges, as if crafted with care and kindness itself. Inside its glass-like center, soft swirls of blue and gold shimmered gently, moving as though they were alive, like warm light breathing in a tiny, peaceful rhythm. The hum in the air softened. The lantern pulsed once, twice, as if greeting him. Johnson's eyes widened with quiet awe. He turned the charm slightly in his hand, watching the colors shift gently with each movement. There was no heaviness to it, only warmth, only peace. And then, without words, the warmth in the air seemed to wrap around him and fill him with meaning. Not a voice, not a message spoken aloud, but a feeling that settled deep into his heart. This is not a reward. It is a reminder of the gentle light he carried within him, one he offered freely through small, quiet acts every day. Johnson felt his throat tighten softly, emotion rising like a tide. He had never thought his kindness was anything unusual. He had never considered himself special. But now, holding this glowing charm, he realized something beautiful. The world noticed even the smallest lights, and sometimes those lights inspired magic in return. The lantern pulsed again, sending a soft wave of warmth up his arms, through his chest, and into his breath. It didn't feel like magic meant to change the world or summon grand miracles. It felt like reassurance, gentle, steady, always there. A promise that whenever he felt lost or overwhelmed, whenever life grew heavy or confusing, the lantern would glow warmly to remind him of who he truly was. Behind him, the mirror's light slowly faded, The feathers drifting in the air settled. The lanterns above softened their glow. It was time for him to leave the float. Not because the magic was ending, but because it had already given him what it came to offer. Johnson held the charm close to his chest, breathing in deeply as the light warmed him from within. The path behind him began to glow, showing the way back out of the float. The lantern charm pulsed in agreement, as if encouraging him onward. With a peaceful heart and a newfound warmth resting safely in his palm, Johnson turned toward the exit, ready to return to the world outside, changed in a way only quiet magic could accomplish. Johnson stepped toward the float's exit, guided by the gentle glow beneath his feet. The lantern charm in his hand pulsed softly, matching the calm rhythm of his breath. As he reached the opening, the warm light around him began to soften, fading into a peaceful mist that drifted away like morning fog. When he stepped off the float and onto the cobblestone street, the world outside felt different, not louder or brighter, but clearer, warmer. It was as if the parade, the town, and the very air had shifted just slightly to welcome him back. The mysterious float lingered for a moment longer. The silver cloth rippled once, glowing as though offering a silent farewell. Then, with the same graceful motion that had carried it through the streets, it drifted forward. Slowly, gently, it glided away, turning the corner of the main road before disappearing behind a row of pastel-colored buildings as if it had never been there at all. Yet the warmth it left behind lingered like a soft glow beneath the skin. The crowd around Johnson exhaled collectively, not in shock or confusion, but in quiet wonder. They didn't speak loudly. No one rushed toward him or asked questions. Instead, the townspeople simply watched him with gentle, knowing smiles, as though they sensed something meaningful had just unfolded, even if they couldn't explain it. A few children waved shyly. Some adults nodded at him with warm eyes. Mr. Rowan, standing near the front, lifted a hand in a small, heartfelt gesture of recognition. Johnson returned each smile with one of his own, calm and grateful. He didn't feel like the center of attention. He felt connected, held softly by the kindness of the people around him, just as he had been held by the light inside the float. The parade resumed shortly after, but Johnson found himself walking away from the square, choosing instead to enjoy the quiet path toward home. The lantern charm hummed faintly against his palm, glowing with a soft blue-gold swirl that warmed the evening breeze. The sun had begun to set, painting the sky in gentle hues of peach, lavender, and warm amber. The light stretched across the rooftops and danced through the leaves of the trees, creating a scene that felt almost like a continuation of the magic he had just witnessed. Johnson walked slowly, savoring each step. He paused once to hold the charm up to the sunset. Its glow blended beautifully with the fading light, creating a small beacon of warmth that felt like a heartbeat in his hand. A reminder, a promise, a quiet truth now etched deeply into him. Magic was real, not because of spells or shimmering floats, but because kindness had the power to shape the world in ways he had never imagined. As he reached his home, Johnson felt an unmistakable calm settle over him. He placed the lantern charm gently on his bedside table, where it glowed softly as though keeping watch. He settled into bed, letting the softness of the night envelop him. His breaths slowed, his shoulders relaxed. The memories of the day drifted through his thoughts like warm lanterns floating across a still lake. And as sleep finally wrapped around him, Johnson realized something peaceful and true. Sometimes the greatest magic arrives quietly, choosing the gentlest hearts, not to change who they are, but to remind them of the light they already carry. With that comforting thought, he drifted into a deep, restful slumber, his heart warm, his spirit calm, and the lantern charm glowing softly beside him like a guardian of his dreams.